go to the grocery store, I look for the Canadian, the little maple leaf that a lot of grocery stores have put on the shelves to, try and purchase Canadian items or Mexican items, anything other than the United States.
Well, I think Canada is going to be a very serious contender to be our 51st state.
Did you know? In 2025, Canada quietly walked away from the American marketplace. No press conferences, no online outrage, just silence. But that silence has cost the US over $2 billion so far. There were no protests, no banners, no angry tweets, just a growing number of Canadians, 59% according to Angus Reid, who started saying no thanks to American brands. Not out loud, but in their kitchens, closets, and driveways. McDonald's? Passed. Amazon? Unsubscribed. Nike? Left on the shelf. And this invisible protest is doing visible damage. Cross-border traffic dropped 23%. Tourism? In free fall. The U.S. Travel Association warned that even a modest 10% drop in Canadian visitors could erase over $2.1 billion from the American economy, and with it, more than 14,000 jobs. Still, Trump laughed it off. But Canadians didn't. They unplugged. Quietly, steadily, purposefully. And it's not just some angry boycott. It's a broken bond. When your closest friend stops coming around, you don't just ask why now. You start wondering, who's next? This isn't just a border skirmish. It's the beginning of a new economic reality. Canadians turned shopping into a form of quiet resistance. Receipts became rejection slips. And the numbers prove it. 85% of Canadians said they had either already started replacing American goods with Canadian alternatives or plan to soon. That's not just noise, it's a movement. By March 2025, Ontario's Liquor Board and other provinces yanked American spirits off the shelves. Within 2 months, sales of U.S. alcohol in Canada plummeted by over 66%. Dragging total liquor sales down nearly 13%. Meanwhile, U.S. border towns from upstate New York to Michigan felt the chill. Empty highways, empty hotels, empty planes. And here's the spark that lit it all. On February 1st, Trump slapped 25% tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. By April, he'd expanded the list to cars and everyday products. Canada didn't just react, they countered hard. Prime Minister Mark Carney's government hit back with export bans and targeted U.S. goods. This wasn't just political theater. Real policies caused real fallout. Canadians started canceling vacations. They ditched Amazon and canceled streaming subscriptions. People began checking labels to avoid US-made goods. Brands once seen as unshakable, McDonald's, Amazon, Tesla, suddenly looked vulnerable in Canada. The foundation of trust between two of the world's closest trading partners has cracked, and the tremors are being felt far beyond politics. What began as a simple trade dispute has morphed into a full-blown economic reckoning. The quiet, calculated choices of millions of Canadian consumers are now shaking the pillars of U.S. corporate dominance. And here's the uncomfortable truth. If Canada can unplug so easily, who's next? Let's talk tourism. The change is impossible to ignore. Canadians, once a reliable stream of visitors to U.S. destinations, are staying home or heading to Europe, Asia, or Mexico. The result? American border towns are eerily quiet. Hotels have vacancies, restaurants have empty tables, tour guides have open schedules. And it's not just speculation, it's data. The U.S. Travel Association, along with border traffic analysts, confirmed what business owners had already felt in their wallets. By early spring 2025, bookings for summer 2025 by Canadian travelers dropped a jaw-dropping 70% compared to the previous year. That isn't just a seasonal slump, that's a message. The message? When President Trump slapped steep tariffs on Canadian exports, it wasn't just an economic play, it was personal. It told Canadians, you're not safe from collateral damage. And they responded, not with protests, but with their wallets. Within days, Canada hit back. Tariffs, import restrictions, provincial bans on U.S. liquor products. Consumers followed suit, pivoting away from American brands almost overnight. Instead of shopping in Buffalo or Boston, Canadians started planning trips to Barcelona or Banff. Instead of New York and Las Vegas, they turned to London, Lisbon, or local getaways. U.S. cities that once depended on Canadian tourism are now reporting sharp declines in revenue and foot traffic. Places like upstate New York, where cross-border business is a lifeline, are facing billions in losses. This isn't just some temporary blip. This is a shift in behavior, fueled by frustration and executed through quiet, strategic spending choices. It's no longer about a few skipped shopping trips. Canadians are canceling entire vacations, avoiding U.S. streaming services, and refusing to buy American-made goods unless they absolutely have to. They're even demanding clearer product labels to steer clear of U.S. brands. This isn't some fringe movement, it's a consumer rebellion. And while it may seem quiet, the consequences are loud. Hotels empty, flights grounded, small businesses suffering. It's a travel freeze that's costing the U.S. billions and potentially threatening its global economic influence. Because if this is what happens when Canada says enough, imagine what could happen if other allies follow suit. The shift isn't just symbolic, it's structural, it's strategic, and it's rewriting the rules of North American trade. Just weeks after the initial tariffs, Canadian provinces began yanking U.S. spirits off the shelves, an act that sent a clear message: the consumer is not just a bystander. They've become the resistance. The boycott didn't need a slogan or a single marching banner. It just happened. Quietly, relentlessly. From downtown liquor stores in Toronto to late-night pubs in Vancouver, U.S. products started vanishing, not because they were banned, but because Canadians simply stopped buying them. Whiskey brands that once flew off the shelves left untouched. Brown-Forman's own CEO said it felt worse than a tariff. And that wasn't just drama, it was reality. When a product is delisted or ignored altogether, the economic bleed is instant. We're talking billions gone in weeks, not months. And the shockwaves didn't stop there. By late April, McDonald's Canada posted one of its worst quarters since the 2020 pandemic. Sales dropped by 3.6% globally, and analysts didn't mince words. The root cause was crumbling consumer confidence, triggered by chaotic tariff policies. Behind the counter, franchise owners in Canada started scaling back orders of Idaho potatoes. Across the Midwest, packaging plants in Missouri slashed shifts. The impact traveled fast, from fast food trays to factory floors. This wasn't a scene for the cameras. There were no chants, no headlines shouting boycott. Just a new normal at checkout lines. Foot traffic in stores stayed steady, but shoppers were suddenly skipping the Coca-Cola, the Jack Daniels, the Tesla brochures. Instead, they scanned for local alternatives, often literally, using apps like Buy Canadian that help consumers dodge American-made goods. It all traced back to January 2025, when the U.S. imposed brutal tariffs, 25% on Canadian steel and aluminum. Canada didn't stay quiet. Tariffs hit back. Liquor was delisted. Exports were restricted. But the real blow came from everyday people making everyday choices. Icons like Amazon, McDonald's, and Tesla, once symbols of global convenience and innovation, now reduced to optional, even controversial choices. The consumer rebellion triggered a deeper crisis. The supply chain itself began to splinter.
Orders dried up, deliveries slowed, pallets went missing, truck schedules were cut. The signs were everywhere, from whiskey shortages in Ontario to fries disappearing off McDonald's menus in parts of Canada. And every shift lost, every empty trailer told the same story. This wasn't just about nationalism or pride, it was a structural failure unraveling in real time. By late January, the crisis escalated. Amazon shocked the Canadian market by announcing it would shut down all 7 of its warehouses in Quebec. Gone. 1,700 full-time jobs and 250 seasonal ones, just like that. Delivery timelines tanked. Prime promises broke down. By mid-February, delays had doubled across the province. Meanwhile, public opinion hardened. A new Angus Reid poll found that 41% of Canadians plan to reduce or stop using Amazon entirely. Nearly 80% said they were now committed to buying Canadian wherever possible. And then there's Tesla. In April 2025, a nationwide poll revealed that a whopping 71% of Canadians favored a temporary ban on Tesla vehicle sales. Cybertruck order cancellations surged across Quebec and Ontario. Consumers were no longer willing to support what they viewed as hostile corporate interests wrapped in toxic politics. Even the ketchup aisle wasn't spared. Heinz, once a fixture on nearly every Canadian table, is being replaced by local alternatives and even French brands. Why? A lingering memory of when Heinz shuttered its plant in Ontario years ago. Canadians didn't forget, and now they're pushing back with every grocery run. It all started with what many dismissed as a political scuffle, just more bluster from Washington. But it morphed into something bigger, deeper, and far more disruptive. The retaliation wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Consumers pulled U.S. products from their lives. Governments followed with bans and tariffs. Now warehouses are shutting down. Jobs are disappearing. Trust is gone. And entire supply chains, once considered unbreakable, are crumbling under the weight of consumer defiance. When Canadians walk into a store or scroll through their favorite shopping apps with one silent goal to avoid U.S. brands, they're doing more than making a purchase. They're rewriting the rules of loyalty. And maybe, just maybe, this isn't just a boycott anymore. What if it's the start of a global reset, one where trust, not tariffs, decides who leads and who gets left behind? The collapse of confidence is no longer theoretical. In early March 2025, Reuters revealed that U.S. citrus and beverage exports to Canada were being quietly canceled. Truckloads of oranges, sodas, and bottled drinks were turned away as major Canadian chains hit pause. It wasn't about quality, it was about principle. By April, the backlash hit something seemingly innocent: the Oreo. Canadian shoppers took to social media in outrage after discovering their Oreos were now labeled Made in Mexico. The outcry wasn't about Mexico, it was about abandonment. One consumer told The Guardian she felt betrayed. The brand she grew up with had quietly left North American soil, and in that quiet shift, trust snapped. Meanwhile, the digital world wasn't immune. Netflix had already sparked outrage with its account-sharing crackdown in 2023. Back then, it annoyed people. In 2025, it enraged them. Suddenly, it wasn't just about a password, it was about being gouged by a US tech giant in the middle of a trade standoff. Chatter surged across forums and feeds. People weren't just threatening to cancel, they were canceling. And they weren't alone. Disney+, X, and other platforms followed suit, triggering a wave of subscription losses. Even Nike wasn't spared. In May, Canadian youth-led movements across Ontario and Quebec launched viral campaigns targeting the company over labor concerns. TikToks, Instagram Reels, campus posters, they all told the same story. Young Canadians were done with global giants that didn't align with their values. Suddenly, buying local wasn't just a preference, it was a cause. What began as political fallout had become something deeply personal. Every grocery aisle, every app tap, every brand choice, a referendum on trust. And the cracks began to show. Heinz lost to French's, Pampers to Royale, Netflix to Crave or Hive. The ripple reached retailers who adjusted their inventory accordingly. Brands lost shelf space, factories reconsidered expansion plans, streamers rethought strategies. Supply chains trembled, not from logistics failures, but from a collapse in consumer confidence. The broader message? The US isn't just facing trade retaliation, it's facing a crisis of relevance. Canada isn't burning flags or staging protests in the streets, it's doing something far more effective. It's walking away, silently, consistently, powerfully. And when American cultural power erodes in a country like Canada, America's closest, most familiar partner, it sends a signal louder than any rally cry. No brand is untouchable anymore. McDonald's, Amazon, Tesla, Oreo, Heinz, these aren't just companies, they are cultural icons, the pillars of American consumer dominance. And right now, those pillars are cracking. Not because the product changed, but because the perception did. A soda isn't just a drink, it's a stance. A streaming subscription, a statement. A sneaker, a judgment call. And the most unsettling part? This isn't backlash from a distant adversary. It's coming from a trusted ally. If Canada can walk away this easily, what does that say about the rest of the world? So here's the real question. Is this a passing protest? Or is this the dawn of a new reality where US brands must fight to stay relevant in markets they once dominated effortlessly? The match may have been a tariff, but the fire? That's consumer trust, and it's burning through borders, supply chains, and assumptions alike. What do you think? Can American companies regain the trust they've lost? Or has the age of brand supremacy quietly come to an end? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this story is far from